An obvious failure of prediction of the future is its inability to accurately profess almost anything about what awaits a new generation of humans. Life isn't as high-tech or even remotely close to all the cool stuff that the people of the last century predicted for us. And despite this obviously flawed nature of guessing what the future looks like, we humans still cannot stop ourselves from guessing what our future as a civilization looks like. Our curiosity always outruns reality, mostly influencing the cultural defining moments of each generation's take on what awaits us ahead. And culture is a weird thing. Once it seeps into our collective consciousness, it has the power to shape our dreams, our fears, and even the entire trajectory of a generation's life. And in the later decades of the 20th century, an entire generation of writers became obsessed with the idea of exploring the bleak consequences of a world covered with tech. Movies like Blade Runner, The Matrix, Akira were major influences at the time that explored a common theme of a dystopian society where tech had reached new endeavors but at a very dangerous human cost. A new world was discovered where governments were irrelevant. Mega corporations threw hundreds of thousands of people in entirely planet-sized buildings where light barely found its way inside, much like the pitch-black lives of the people living in these buildings. It's a world where cities are overcrowded, extremely polluted, and often crime-ridden. And while the technology can possibly do anything one can imagine, the human condition is riddled with the problems of homelessness, inequality, poor management of waste, drug addiction, exploding crime rates, and racism, all of which sounds exactly like an exaggerated version of our own world. Thus, an entirely new genre was formed, Cyberpunk, a cultural phenomenon that is much like our own world than we can dare to accept. And decades later, a Polish video game development studio would go on to give us a genre-defining experience with Cyberpunk 2077.
Good morning, Night City! Yesterday's body count lottery rounded out to a solid and sturdy 30. 10 out of Haywood, thanks to unabated gang wars. One officer down, so I guess you're all screwed, cause the NCPD will not let that go. Got another blackout in Santo Domingo. Netrunners are at it again, poking holes in the power grid. While over in Westbrook, trauma teams scraping cyber psycho victims off the pavement. And in Pacifica, well, Pacifica is still Pacifica. This has been your man, Stan. Join me for another day in our city of dreams.
The history of Cyberpunk 2077 dates back to 1988, arguably one of the first take on cyberpunk fiction in tabletop games, published by Mike Pondsmith. The game explored what happens to humanity where everything is coded with the greedy high-tech world of mega corporations, netrunners, cyber enhancements, and street-level anti-heroes called edgerunners. Style over substance, attitude is everything, live on the edge, and become a Night City legend. It's the perfect blend of style, attitude, and the fusion of punk ethos with modern technology, and the only law of the land is that there are no rules of becoming a Night City legend. It's simply the art of chasing a dream. The American dream became a Night City dream, an ideological construct, because what is the American dream? Narratives that offer visions of success, identity, and freedom. At its core, the American dream is a liberal ideal. If you're free, you can build your life however you want. It's grounded in Enlightenment humanism, a belief that rational individuals given liberty can pursue happiness. Freedom here is constructive. It allows for upward mobility, family, life, education, and civic contribution. In Cyberpunk's Night City, freedom is destructive. The legend is built on resisting systems, tearing down walls, and making a name in a world that erases people. It's existentialist. Freedom exists because there is no God, no justice, only choice and consequence. You're radically free and therefore radically alone. It's not about building a life, it's about not dying forgotten. In the Night City legend, it's the scream of self-assertion in a world that that does not care anymore. In an ideal world, the American dream is all about being the author of your destiny, rise through hard work, discipline, and moral commitment. The problem with the American dream is that it just assumes that there is a system in place that allows for a proper working of the American dream. And while on paper Night City is the land of opportunities, the reality is much more bleak than that. There is not even an assumption of the existence of a system in place. You become a legend not by fitting in, but by standing out. Radically, violently, and stylistically. But what about the American dream? Does it even exist? Maybe the reality of our world and the world of Cyberpunk is far similar already than we would like to accept. The truth is, the American dream might just be a lie, and the reality might be how we're edging closer and closer to the dystopia of Night City. The American dream is a testament of your trust in systems, that they work, that they will never let you down. And while surely the age of massive immigration has helped change lives overnight, but is there really no doubt in our minds about its working? Do we really trust this so-called system so blindly that no matter what, we continue to ignore the pitch black abyss we're heading towards? Because if the dream was real, people wouldn't be working 3 jobs and still be drowning. People wouldn't be one illness away from bankruptcy. People wouldn't have to sell their time, their body, even their identity to stay afloat. And so what if there is no structure, no safety net, no ladder, no justice, just competition, chaos, and the illusion of choice? In Night City, they don't lie to you. They don't pretend that the system works. There is no system. There is only power. The legend of Night City is the rejection of the dream. It's saying, if the world gives me nothing, I'll carve my name into its concrete corpse anyway. One asks you to trust what the other demands that you scream. And maybe, just maybe, that scream is more honest than the dream has ever been. And in that revelation, Cyberpunk doesn't offer hope. It offers a mirror, a brutal neon-lit mirror. And when you look at it, you might just see your city, your world staring right back into it. The systems we were once told to trust are no longer doing what they were supposed to do. They are not even pretending to do their work. In fact, they are all just becoming increasingly efficient at doing the opposite. Meanwhile, in Cyberpunk's Night City, the pretense is stripped away. There is no narrative about fairness or a level playing field. Power isn't hidden behind press releases or policy language. It's visible, brutal, and constant. The corporations don't pretend to care. The police aren't protecting you. Everyone is a product and everything has a price. That's the disturbing part. Night City isn't some exaggerated dystopia. It's just a more honest version of what happens when systems are left to rot, or worse, deliberately rigged. You don't need to be a hacker or a mercenary to feel like you're living in Night City. You just need to look around. In Night City, they tell you the truth, but in our world, they still try to sell you the dream. And the truth is, when the dream becomes unreachable for most, it turns into a weapon, a tool to measure failure, to assign blame, to keep people chasing something that they were never meant to catch. It begs a serious question. What happens to humanity when technology evolves much faster than your ethics? Is the data you provide to these algorithms much more important than your life? What is the cost of human life when almost everything about you and who you are can be stored, edited, replayed for much longer after you're gone from this world? Well, now that is a double-edged sword, because for someone like we, the answer might be pretty worthless, but it might mean something entirely different for someone like a legend. Perhaps Johnny Silverhand.
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Johnny Silverhand is the rock icon in Night City, or rather the personification of self-destruction. He is what V will become in his chase of becoming an MC legend. He burned with idealism and resentment wrapped in leather and wired with rage. Johnny Silverhand is the emperor of the rock world in this city. His music is a war against the state of the world. It's a protest, just not always in very good ways. But the legend is just not something that can be covered in a single video. His music, his style, his mere existence is rooted in the foundation of Night City. Why though? Is it just because of his beats, or the fact that people will literally follow him blindly, which makes his actions so central to Night City? Sure, music is a part of it, considering punk music has always been associated with anti-establishment beliefs and causes. Why though? One too many questions, but all very important in the discussion of this complex character. Well, if you look at the punk artists, every fabric of their existence denies the values of societal norms. This culture of resistance is cemented in not just their ideologies, but also in the clothes that they wear every day, all of which further influences millions of people, and hence a rippling effect of resisting the norm of what looks normal, and then fighting the larger causes that people shouldn't be forced to live like insects in buildings far too huge. Corporations should not reduce the token of human life to mere consumers of their hyper-sexualized products. Punk was always a protest. The clothes said, "We don't accept your taboos. We don't accept your hypocritical life. I have always been a rebel."
人は嘘をつき自分自身も欺く。だが死者は違う。
Told you, Johnny boy. Told you I'd end you someday.
Johnny Silverhand embodies the same raw defiance that punk culture carved into its own skin. Johnny weaponized his style as resistance. His leather jacket, mirrored shades, and samurai insignia are not just fashion. There is much more to it. Even his digital afterlife mirrors the way punk resisted annihilation. His war against Arasaka left him erased, his body gone, his name outlawed. Yet he survives as an engram, a ghost screaming rebellion through the mercy of the very machines he despised. Because Johnny wasn't just noise and chaos. Underneath the swagger and the shades, there was a wound that never closed. Punk was never only about spitting at authority. His rage wasn't random. It had a name, a target, a history soaked in blood and neon. That's what made him dangerous. Not the bombs, not the guns, not even the engram that clawed its way into the 21st century, but the fact that he made rebellion contagious. He took despair and made it an anthem. He took grief and hammered it into a rallying cry. When he screamed on stage, he wasn't just singing, he was handing people a weapon carved from sound. And the corpse knew it. That's why they hated him. That's why they tried to erase him. Because the thing about someone like Johnny Silverhand is that you can kill the body, burn the name, bury the story, but you can't kill the echo. Punk taught us that. Every safety pin, every ripped shirt, every snarling guitar riff was a proof that erasure never works. Johnny is the echo. He's the feedback hole that keeps rattling even after the music cuts. And maybe that's why, even as a ghost, he still matters. Because Johnny Silverhand is less a man than a dare. A challenge to every person staring up at the towers of Night City wondering if resistance is still possible. He was never a clean hero though, never the saint his friends painted on the walls. He was reckless, arrogant, and loud. He drank too much, trusted too little, and left scars on the people who stood closest to him. Rogue knew it, Carrie knew it, Alt knew it the most of all. He carried his ideals like a Molotov cocktail, beautiful in the light, but dangerous to everyone around him once it shattered. But that's the thing about punks. They were never meant to be perfect. They were meant to be raw. Of course, it consumed him. That's the tragedy. Punk always burnt hot and fast, and Johnny was no exception. He knew his war might not be winnable, but he also knew silence was not an option. He'd rather go down screaming than living quiet. That's why he strapped a bomb to his ideals and pulled the pin. Well, rebellion doesn't really have to win to matter. Sometimes all it has to do is survive, long enough to remind the next poor bastard with a guitar, a gun, or a voice that resistance is still possible. And maybe that's why he endures. Not because he was flawless, but because he was real. Because he was hurt, he loved, he raged, and he never stopped spitting in the face of the boot pressing down on him. Johnny was Punk through, and Punk, no matter how many times they try to kill it, never really dies. To me, Johnny Silverhand wasn't a myth or a mural sprayed on a wall. He was a parasite, a ghost squatting in someone else's body, an unwanted passenger who wouldn't shut up. At first, Johnny was nothing but poison, sarcasm, rage, and a constant reminder that V's days were numbered. He was the last thing V wanted in their head, and exactly what they couldn't get rid of. But the longer they shared the same skull, the harder it became to draw a line between them. We saw the man beneath the static, the scars from alt, the bitterness that never healed, the stubborn refusal to bend to anyone's rule. And Johnny in turn saw V's own fight, the desperation, the hunger to survive, the stubborn spark that reminded him of himself before the world burnt him hollow. What initially began as a curse turned into something stranger. Johnny wasn't just a squatter anymore. He became a mirror. He forced V to ask questions that no one in Night City wanted to ask. Who am I when the corpse stripped me down to nothing? What's left of me when the machine rewrites my flesh? Am I still human if I share my head with someone else's ghost? For V, Johnny was torment and teacher in equal measure. He was a bad influence whispering, burn it down, and the reluctant ally reminding them that silence was worse than death. In the end, Johnny became what he never thought he'd be to anyone again. Necessary, not as a hero, not as a legend, but as a companion in the face of oblivion. That's also the paradox of Johnny Silverhand. He began in V's story as a parasite, but he ended as something closer to a partner. Not because he changed into something else, something gentler. He was still abrasive, still reckless, still Johnny. But because V learned to live with contradictions, to see that even a ghost stitched together from rage and regret could remind you how to be alive much better than Night City ever could have. And that is exactly what Johnny's final victory is. Not Arasaka Tower, not the concerts, not the revolution he never won, but the fact that in the wreckage of Night City, in one's fading days, he became more than a relic of the past. He became a reason to keep going. In Night City.
Good morning, Night City.
Night City, the beating heart of Cyberpunk 2077, is dazzling. Suffocating sprawl where neon lights flicker like promises and loneliness seeps into every corner. As we, a scrappy mercenary clawing for survival, you navigate a world that's equal parts breathtaking and soul-crushing. The game's story, a whirlwind of heists, betrayals, and fleeting friendships, lays bare a truth. The truth that in a city obsessed with chrome and power, isolation is the real currency. Through V's eyes, Cyberpunk 2077 weaves a tale that's less about sci-fi spectacle and more about the human need for connection in a world that seems designed to keep us apart merely for corporate exploitation.
Here in Night City. Here in Night City.
By exploring its characters and choices, we can see reflections of our own lives, forcing us to question how we stay human in an increasingly digital age. You start as V, making in a cramped apartment to the hum of Night City's chaos. Whether you're a street kid, a wandering nomad, or a corporate climber, the city doesn't care. It grinds everyone down the same. Your early companion, Jackie Wells, is a burst of warmth, all big dreams and bigger laughs, sharing beers and stories. But even Jackie is bound by the city's rules.
When you pull off a risky heist at Kompeki Plaza, hoping to hit the big time, it all crumbles. Jackie's death in a cab, clutching a biochip that's now your burden, hits like a punch to the gut. That chip, the relic, carries the ghost of Johnny Silverhand, a rebel rocker whose memories start overriding your own, arguing with a dead man about freedom and fate. The people you meet deepen this sense of solitude. Take Judy Alvarez, the brain-dance techie tucked away in her cluttered studio. She crafts virtual escapes, love, thrills, or pain for people desperate to feel something.
Pretty here in our city. She pulls my trigger, got me up alright.
But her own life is quite a tragedy. Judy's lost people she loved, and her fight to free the workers of Clouds, a club where minds are hacked for profit, shows her heart still beating despite the hurt. It's a snapshot of how Night City's tech meant to connect us often leaves us more alone, chasing fake feelings while real ones fade. Then there's Panam Palmer, leading her clan across the dusty Badlands. Her people are tight-knit, a family forced by survival, yet Panam carries her own loneliness. Her story involves fixing broken ties with her clan, stealing back what's hers, and wrestling with her need for independence. Driving through the desert with her, the radio crackling and the horizon endless. You talk about dreams and regrets. Those quiet exchanges or the adrenaline of a midnight heist together spark something real, but it's fleeting. Panam's life on the move mirrors the game's broader truth. In a world ruled by greed, belonging is rare, hard-won thing, like a campfire that burns out by the dawn. This entire theme of loneliness is painted on a grand scale. Gangs carve out turf with blood and bullets, but their loyalty is skin-deep, driven by necessity. Corpers like Arasaka Saburo chase immortality through tech, sacrificing family for cold ambition. The airwaves blare with ads for instant gratification, new implants, virtual lovers, yet they only deepen the void. Even the city's beauty, rain-soaked neon, flying cars slicing through the smog, feels like a mask for its emptiness. Ray's apartment, no matter how you decorate it, always feels like a borrowed space, a place to crash but never to belong. It's a rare occurrence where the apartment of our protagonist brings no actual joy during a visit. It's depressing, it's sad. What makes this game so human is how it captures these small, aching moments. The way a stranger's glance lingers in a crowded market, the unanswered text from a friend, the endings where you fight for a cure, merge with Johnny, or slip away quietly, force you to confront what it means to be you when tech blurs the line. It's not just a game, it's a mirror of our own world in 2025, where screens dominate and connection feels like a fading signal. I mean, look at us today. Social media apps promise friends, but leave us scrolling in silence. Studies show loneliness spiking as we trade real hugs for emojis. Much like Night City's brain dances, big tech, Google, Meta plays Arasaka, harvesting our data while we drift further and further apart. The gig economy turns us into we, hustling for the next job, no safety net. The pandemic's shadow lingers, with Zoom calls replacing coffee dates, leaving us craving for something real. But Cyberpunk 2077 whispers hope, Judy's courage, Panam's loyalty, even Johnny's stubborn fight. They show connection is still possible. Tech isn't the enemy, it's how we use it. If we don't want to end up like Night City's ghost, we need to hold tight to the messy, beautiful human things. Laughter, touch, trust, before they slip away in the neon haze. But maybe even that is being way too hopeful for a world like Night City. Because every time you hope, reality hits you and you drown even deeper. Hope is a cruel joke whispered by the dying. Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't just depict a dystopia, it drowns you into it. A relentless tide of despair that erodes the soul until nothing remains but hollow echoes. You're not a hero, you're a pawn in a game rigged from the start, chasing illusions of freedom in a world where every wire, every implant tightens the noose around humanity's neck. The story isn't one of triumph or redemption, it's a metaphor of what we've lost, a reminder that in cyberpunk future, connection is a myth and extinction is the only escape. There's no dawn in Night City, no hero's arc. These endings, erasure, exile, extinction are mercy killings. The rain keeps falling, washing away the last traces of hope, leaving only the chrome void. In this cyberpunk hell, humanity doesn't evolve, it dissolves, forgotten in the static.
We'll never